everyone for coming. Oh, lots of new faces here and a lot of familiar faces. So welcome everyone. My name is Deb Angus and we'll get started in the presentation here. We do intros in here as well. And tonight's session is about learning to accept the new you. Oh yes, we do have some handouts. It's just the resource slides from the presentation. So a lot of people are always asking if these are printed down anywhere or whatever, so I thought I'd have them ready ahead of time. So introductions, here I am, Deb Angus. I'm the founder of this group. I'm a traumatic brain injury survivor warrior. I was injured in 2001 and wasn't diagnosed until 2003. And it was a result of multiple concussions throughout my lifetime, which I wasn't aware of at that time. And so I had a neuropsych assessment done at Foothills, and it was diagnosed as mild, borderline, moderate. And I wrote and researched this book for over a 10-year period, and just explaining everything that I went through and how hard it was to find the medical help that I needed. And I was hoping that things have improved a little bit for people here in Calgary, and they have, but there's still a lot of cracks that people are falling behind, so that's why I decided to start up this group and let people know some of the resources that are available here, and to explain some of the things that we do go through with concussion and brain injury recovery. And my cohort here is Josie, and she's a concussion survivor warrior. She's 3 years now post-injury, and she's a former healthcare nurse, and she still advises me in the background. I'm trying to get her to come in as a guest speaker. We want to do a session on some of our success stories of people who have made some progress, and she's offered to be one of the panel members to talk about that. So why are we here? We're here to help raise awareness about the seriousness of concussions and traumatic brain injuries, to help you understand the symptoms of a concussion, how easily these injuries happen, the healing process for concussions, and consequences of multiple concussions. We just have about 4 slides of housekeeping that we do at the beginning here. To share coping strategies that will help you while recovering, and to live well in spite of brain injury, and to provide support for those afflicted with these injuries, and to help family and friends better understand what you are truly up against. And we have a disclaimer here. The ideas, suggestions, general principles, and conclusions presented are subject to your personal health and sound medical advice. Every possibility is not represented here, nor do we presume that all possibilities relate to your specific situation. This awareness group is not a substitute for recognized medical advice or treatment. Always consult your healthcare practitioner for medical advice. Group guidelines for confidentiality, respect, and participation. Thoughts, feelings, experiences shared in this group will stay in this group. Respect others' right to keep their information private. Accept and respect what is unique to each attendee in the group. Be respectful of others' spirituality, religion, and belief systems. Allow others equal time for sharing. Feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentation, and if you prefer to remain silent and pass on sharing at any time, especially when we get into the sharing circle at the end, please feel free to do so and pass. Our meeting structure, normally we do a 20-minute presentation, and for people who are fairly high symptomatic, if they need a break, we will ask at that time if they would like to take a little 10-minute break, and then we continue on with the rest of our presentation, and sometimes you do bring in a guest speaker, and then we follow up with a 30 to 40-minute sharing circle at the end. Cell phones, if everyone could please turn off their cell phones so we don't have any interruptions during the presentations. Thank you. And this is our presentation for this evening. Learning to accept the new you. And I'd like to quantify that this session here, I did explain in the description, is intended for people who've been dealing with concussion or brain injuries for 1 to 2 years or longer. But if you're just new into the concussion world within like 6 months or so, there's a couple seats up here, and you can put some chairs over here for you as well. So it's more intended for people who are mild, moderate, or severe traumatic brain injury. Like I said, I was diagnosed as mild, borderline, moderate, and we have another fellow here who's in a serious motorcycle accident, and he was diagnosed as mild. This is permanent injuries. It's never going to go away. And this is the graphic I came up with because a lot of people out there are saying concussion, also known as mild traumatic brain injury, and that is not correct. Because I'm following the research here from the Concussion in Sport group, where they say in their consensus statement The terms concussion and mild traumatic brain injury should not be used interchangeably. Now where we're getting into trouble is here, because this is the new science and it's becoming more public awareness of this. And a lot of people in the medical field, they haven't even really decided on what the accurate description is of a concussion. So that everybody's bantering around these terminologies. And I'm saying, well, how can they compare a concussion, which if it's your first one, you should be better after a couple of months, maybe up to a year if you have post-concussion syndrome. But if you've had multiple concussions, or if you've had a serious enough accident, that's when you possibly could get into the permanent territory, past that red line. So the new self. I recall the first time I heard the term new self. It was during a session with an OT in 2003, where I was crying and I was asking, why can't I just do everything the way I've always been doing it? And she just held up her hand and said, stop. We're here to, that was your old self. We're here to work with your new self and the deficits you are now facing. I had no clue what she was talking about. Nobody even really explained it to me. So loss of self, brain injury fact. Not only do we have to navigate the medical system to find the right doctors that will help us obtain an accurate diagnosis, and therapists for rehab that will enable us to live well in spite of brain injury, we are also adjusting to finding ourselves in a different world and being a different person with a non-visible injury that no one seems to recognize, simply because we look the same. We are living with a laundry list of symptoms, from head pain, problems with our eyes, our hearing, our speaking, balance and coordination, neurofatigue, and lots more. Many do not realize there is no centralized system in place to address brain injuries as there is for cancer, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, Alzheimer's. There's programs set up for this, and immediately when you're in the hospital or they assign you, like I had to go through kidney stuff, and I was assigned a nephrologist and renal nurses and dietitians and social work, and I'm sitting there and saying, well, why isn't it set up this way for brain injuries? They are working at it, but it just seems to be taking forever. And there was very little recognition by our family physicians about the long-term ongoing issues many are faced with after concussion. The doctor I was seeing at the time, I was in my mid-40s, he was trying to blame it on menopause. There is very little awareness of brain injuries within the general public. Almost nil, really, unless it happens to you. Many of us are ridiculed, debased, and ignored simply because you look the same. Loss of self is the most misunderstood yet devastating aspect of brain injury, and it's never really fully explained to us. It never was for me when I went through any rehab or anything. Anybody else here experience that? Nobody's helped you or explained this to you? Yeah? Isn't that something? And this is the hardest part, I think, of brain injury. It is so much more than simply losing a skill or an ability. It has been compared to losing an appendage. The pain can be just as deep, but with no recognition or understanding from others. Loss of self is so encompassing and intense because you literally have lost a huge part of who you were as a person. The way you think, the way you reason, how you cope, your emotions, even down to the very way you carry yourself. All are altered now. This affects your entire outlook on life, your very way of being. The one person you could rely on, yourself, is now unreliable. Loss of self rattles you down to your soul and undermines every ounce of stability or forethought you ever had about yourself. Your feelings of self-worth are greatly diminished, and any sense of confidence you once had is completely destroyed. And that was the hardest one for me. I went to work every day, and I was working with PhD level people at the university, and my professor was a very busy fellow, and I'm just, how do you walk in there with confidence when you can't even speak properly, you can't even walk properly? It's very devastating. Our consciousness and experience of selfhood are the essence of human nature. Without our sense of self, what do we have? Brain injury is a life-altering event. We have lost our way of thinking, of speaking, of doing things, of interacting with the world and the people around us. something unfathomable to anyone who has never experienced any type of traumatic event. And it was so important to me, I dedicated an entire chapter to loss of self, chapter 4. And here's from the Brain Injury Resource Center's website, and this is an organization down in Seattle, Washington. Loss of self is often the real tragedy of traumatic brain injury. It is a loss so profound that many never recover from it. Brain injury strips away a lifetime of learning, of personal identity, and personal power. The loss is a soul-shattering experience, intense and intimate. It is so intimate that society as a whole averts its eyes and closes its ears to the pain and the despair of such a naked soul. I don't know about you guys, but I felt like a naked little baby chick in the middle of the road getting ready to get run over by a bus. That's how you're so stripped of everything, of who you were. Recognizing loss of self can be difficult for many because it is also intertwined with denial. I remember somebody telling me that they denied it for 4 years after their accident. They said, oh no, nothing's wrong. Then eventually they had to admit. Same as me. I think it took 3 years before I realized, because they told me that in 2003 during rehab, and then I fought it, and I said, well, I'm good. There's nothing wrong with me. I can get better. I can get over this. And after 3 years, I said, I guess they're right. I have to figure out how to move on from here. Denial is a primary defense mechanism to help us deal with circumstances and issues we find overwhelming. Denial is also one of the stages of grief. And the 5 stages of grief here by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's an expert on dying and death and grieving. And the 5 steps she's outlined in her theory here is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And in her graphic here, denial also comes with avoidance, confusion, elation, shock, and fear. Anger comes with frustration, irritation, anxiety. Bargaining, struggling to find meaning, reaching out to others, telling of one's story. I did that a lot. Depression, overwhelmed, helplessness, I can't read that, hostility and flight. And acceptance, exploring options, new plan in place, and moving on. And you can see it's like a roller coaster. And sometimes you're over in anger, and then you're over in depression. It's not a straightforward healing thing. It's all over the place. And with this also has to come the information and communication aspect. Emotional support is very important, as well as guidance and direction. And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't receive any of that. So I've updated this as well too to show the stages of grief with TBI, traumatic brain injury. Yes, we have denial, and it really helps when we start recognizing our loss of self. We have anger, but if we learn better coping skills and self-care, that certainly helps. Bargaining. So many people I've come across, they said, they'll do anything to make this go away. They just said, I don't want to live like this anymore. Just make it go away. I want to be who I was before. Well, unfortunately, it's not going to happen that way. And depression is part of TBI. A lot of people say they go to doctors and they said they got diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And the doctor's not recognizing, well, they have depression and anxiety because they have a traumatic brain injury. So they're not looking at the whole picture. And they're going to medicate you for depression when they're not addressing the core issue here. And acceptance is coming along when you start discovering your new self. Grieving and acceptance. Excuse me. It can take several years to learn to recognize your deficits and learn how to compensate for it. Does everyone here understand what their deficits are from their brain injuries? And how did you find out about that?
Once I wasn't overloading my brain as much, then I recognized the deficits.
Okay. Nobody actually sat you down and said this, and this?
Some of them they did.
Yeah.
Like my balance.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But like with my sight sensitivity, my hearing sensitivities, I just learned that on my own.
And what about any cognitive issues? Were you aware of those, or did someone outline those for you?
No, actually, I had some close friends that we actually set up a dialogue and we would trust what they were telling me.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned about that stuff.
Okay. Well, I had a neuropsych assessment done, and they pointed out to me, here's your problem here you're okay, here's another problem over here you're okay, you're actually fairly high functioning there, here you're very low functioning, there's some issues going on over here. And so what they identified were attention and concentration issues and getting information in. I needed repetition, at least 4 or 5 times before I could. Once it was in there, I was fine. I was off and running, but getting it in was unbelievable. Still to this day, I met somebody new the other day, and I asked her 3 times, what was your name again? And I told her, just be patient. Once I get it in there, I'll be fine. But it's just amazing that if you don't have the right diagnosis, is it a concussion? Have you had multiple concussions? What is your concussion history? Is it possible that you might be dealing with a mild or moderate TBI? Depending on all those factors, somebody should be sitting down with you and saying, these are your deficits and this is what you got to work on. That to me was a huge starting point when I realized, oh, okay, I see now. And then you have to start recognizing what they're outlining for you, because I didn't know any of that. I was dealing with all the physical and the visual and the balance and all that kind of stuff. I had no idea about the cognitive issues. So full recovery is generally not to be expected, especially if you're in the permanent territory, mild, moderate, or severe. There is a strong possibility there will be residual effects and deficits to contend with for the rest of your life. Only when you begin to truly understand and comprehend this aspect, it will greatly shift your self-perception. And again, this is more for people who are in the traumatic brain realm, the mild, moderate, or severe. But if it's concussion or post-concussion syndrome, you have lots of possibilities for recovery, and it may not be full-time, permanent.
Sorry, and the difference is about the 12-month mark?
That's in the research that I've come across. They said that post-concussion syndrome usually should be clearing up within the first 12 months. And then there's persistent post-concussion syndrome, and and I don't know what the actual timeline, and every doctor in every region is probably different. Like I said, there's no fixed definitions on any of this. But when I came across another scientist down in the States, and he was saying, a researcher I should say, and he said 1 year for post-concussion syndrome, possibly if it goes longer than that, to 2 years, it could be persistent post-concussion syndrome.
And what if it's longer than that?
Then you have to get more assertive with finding the right doctors and getting the right testing and getting the right diagnosis. Did we cover that last bit there? Only when you begin to truly understand and comprehend this aspect will greatly shift your self-perception. So this is the self here. So in the core, in your being here, your inner self, you know who you are. Self-concept, who am I? Well, with brain injury, concussion, that's kind of like out the window. Self-knowledge, how can I explain and predict myself? Again, that doesn't exist for a while. Social self, my roles as a student, family member and friend, my group identity. Our social skills are down the toilet with traumatic brain injury. And self-esteem and my sense of self-worth, that's as well as down in the toilet as well, because we can't function the way we used to. Like I say to a lot of people, you lose your sparkle. And it takes a long time to work and a lot of hard work to get it back. And it is altered a little bit differently, but you can still pull it off. And here's Diane Robert-Stoller. She's the author of Coping with Mild Traumatic Brain Injury. She's the book I referred to after I heard about new self, old self, and loss of self. I didn't know what any of this stuff, and I went to her book, and that's when I found out, okay, I understand what this is now. And she says here, it hurts to accept the reality that you may never completely recover, and both recovery and grieving can be slow processes. Once you give yourself permission to grieve, however, you will find the going much easier. Discovering your new self, a big part of this acceptance is learning how to appreciate the new person you are becoming. Your new self is just ahead. Sometimes on the way to your dream, you get lost, but you find a better one. And that's hard for a lot of people to let go. I've come across so many people, well, I was working on my master's, and I'm supposed to be doing this, and I'm supposed to be doing that. And I said, well, you have a little detour here going on right now. Who knows? You might be able to continue on with that, but you might need to work on getting well first for a few years before you can continue that. Or if not, there's another road over here. Maybe you're being pointed in another direction. There's something better for you over here. Who knows? Discovering new self, rebuilding a new self requires an open mind and willingness for exploration and discovery, and a huge dose of humor. Learning to laugh at yourself and your situation really goes a long way. As well, you have to find out what your new interests are. A lot of times those have changed. Any new skills you have, a lot of times somebody was very specialized in something and all of a sudden they can't do it anymore. Well, maybe there was something else that you wanted to do before and you never got around to it. Maybe now's the time to try it. Excuse me. And new friends do come along. That's the biggest thing as well, too. A lot of our friends have dropped out in our lives. And that's really devastating as well, too. So sometimes you find some new friends come along. And with all that, you start discovering your new self. And lots of radical self-love sure helps too. And self-care. With knowledge of the specific aspects of your brain injury and the deficits you now face, that's why it's so important to be aware of where your brain was injured, what regions, what deficits you have, what problems you're having cognitively, not only physically, and you know, with your eyes, your hearing, balance, whatever. It's also for the cognitive issues. You need to be aware of that. And if you're not being provided that information, keep fighting until you get it. You can begin to trust your basic instincts and find the courage to build and shape a new reality. Like I said, once I found out the results of the neuropsych assessment, and they told me this is where you're having problems, this is where you're having problems. And so then I spent the next year or two, and I was working through all this, and I said, okay, they're telling me I have this problem. I'm going to see if I can figure out how this is happening. I didn't recognize it. So I had to slow down everything and say, oh, okay, I see now where I'm having that problem. And so a lot of times it's just learning to see it and recognizing it, and then finding ways to work around it. And that was my off point of saying, oh, okay, now I've got to recognize this, and now I've got to figure out ways to work around it and things I can do to help make it better. And learn to become comfortable within your skin once again and with your changed capabilities. However, must be mindful of the ever-present factor of unpredictability. We never seem to can get away with this now with the brain injury. That can still have a significant impact on your life and your rehabilitation. So everybody expects recovery to go from point A to point B. Well, that's not reality. I think a lot of us know that here. Have we experienced this?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the downturns and the relapses and they say, oh, I got to redo this again, and it just seems never ending. And this is where the patience and persistence and that comes into play here. The rehabilitation recovery period for many with TBI is a lonely and emotionally painful journey towards reclaiming a life, and it can take years. Grief, if you've ever had to deal with grief with losing a family member or a friend or anything, it takes years, and it's not going to be any different for yourself. Especially if you really, really, really liked who you were before. Aside from other survivor warriors, only those professionally trained in this field can fully understand and appreciate what a person with TBI is going through. But the sad fact is, it is those who have traveled the same road who can truly understand what you're going through. We are embarking upon one of life's most difficult journeys. The road we are on has now become rough and bumpy and unpredictable. Hold on to your hats and your sanity. We're now in detour country. It will not last forever. It just seems that way. Eventually, you'll come out the other end stronger, wiser, more understanding, and compassionate towards others, as we have experienced what it is like to be ignored, shunned, and ridiculed, all because of an injury that no one can see and no one understands. It is so unfair. It is very important to keep your focus on being proactive, motivated, and involved with your healing process. You will sometimes feel like you are fumbling in the dark no matter how well you may be progressing, which can be very discouraging. But patience, persistence, and perseverance, my 3 Ps I mentioned, are qualities you will need to learn and develop. You basically have to slow down. You have to slow down your pace in life. You have to drop out a lot of stuff that you think is important in your life right now. Right now, what's more important is rebuilding yourself and rewiring your brain. All this other stuff is superfluous, it's nonsense. You don't have time for that right now. You have to be here and dedicate yourself to being well. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Or in other words, a lot of people say as well, bloom where you are planted. Discovering your new self is exciting, yet sometimes it can be scary and frustrating, just as any growing process can be. With hard work, perseverance, willingness to learn, explore, be creative, you will eventually become more comfortable with your newfound abilities. I've heard of people who after a brain injury all of a sudden became math experts. They became geniuses. So you just never know, like, we're fixed on, now this was my life and this is what I built and I worked so hard on, but you just never know. You have to open up to possibilities. There could be something even better around the corner for you. You will find a sense of accomplishment in your achievements, no matter how small they may seem at the time. I remember at the beginning I couldn't even tie a bow. I was working on a craft project and I was working on some packaging and I couldn't tie a ribbon bow for the packaging. And I'd laugh and I'd say, look at this, I can't even tie a bow. And I tried and tried and I did it over. Repetition works great. When you're ever having a problem, don't avoid it, just keep repeating it. That's a signal that that's an area you're having trouble on. Don't avoid it, keep at it. And so I tied over 100 bows to prepare for the craft show. And I couldn't get it right. It still wasn't perfect, but I was starting to get them better. And luckily I didn't own any shoes that I had to tie. All my shoes were slip-ons or zip-outs. So even those small little accomplishments you have to celebrate. I tied a bow today. You have to relearn everything all over again. About yourself, about the environment you live in, the people around you, and how the world works. This is hard work, but you can't avoid it. If you want to make progress and get out of the dungeon that you're in right now, this is what you're going to have to do. Your learning styles may also have been greatly affected, so you must constantly readjust, rethink, and retry everything until you find what works best. You can't get hung up and say, like what I was doing at occupational therapy, why can't I just do everything the way I used to? It's not going to work. So she was giving me strategies on how to deal with stuff in a busy workplace and how I can keep track of everything. I'm like, this isn't going to help. So and I would look at it and I would laugh and I said, well, how is this going to help? But I still kept doing it. And it wasn't until about a year later and I go, So you can't walk out of there and say, well, they didn't help me. There wasn't anything there that could, you got to keep at it. There's method behind their madness. You don't have to get back to who you were before your trauma. You can go forward and become someone really terrific afterwards. Living well in spite of brain injury requires your utmost attention to every detail of your daily life. In an effort to maintain an appearance of reasonable normalcy, it requires extra effort and vigilance, which creates unavoidable fatigue and the need for frequent rest periods throughout the day and more quiet time. It's a whole different mode of living now. You have to learn how to work through pain, work through adversity, and within your new limitations. You have to learn to work smart, conserve your energy is a big one, and become highly focused and deliberate in everything you do. You just can't go out willy-nilly now and say, oh, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I have 10 errands to run. You'd be lucky if you could do 2. Every day will be different. This is another issue a lot of people have. They don't understand why is it so hard. It's important to be mindful of your strength, balance and coordination, speech and concentration capabilities in order to navigate your day accordingly. So a lot of times I would keep a chart and I would keep track of how much sleep did I get, did I have any pain and where was that pain, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad was that pain, what kind of energy. It's almost like the Parkwood pacing and the spoon theory stuff. And you have to realize, okay, I didn't get a good night's sleep last night, so I'm not going to have 4 hours of energy today. I'm going to be lucky if I have 2. So you're going to have to make adjustments for that day or cancel a lot of plans. I've done that numerous times. This is the most difficult aspect of TBI. Every day is so uncertain, so unpredictable, and seemingly so difficult. It takes a lot of courage and patience to head out every day given these uncertainties, compounded with the fear of not knowing if you'll even make it to the end of the day. That was a constant one for me when I was going to work every day. I always hit the wall at 1 o'clock, and I figured out, they taught me some things too from rehab, and I said, okay, this is what I have to do to make it till 4:30. Okay, because I'm dying by 1 o'clock. And I said, what do I got to do to make it to 4:30? So there's things that they were teaching me, like taking brain breaks during the day and not socializing on my breaks or my lunch hour. It was more important for me to take the breaks. And the brain break is laying down somewhere in a dark room on the floor or on a sofa, towel over your eyes, complete darkness, but complete quiet for 15, 20 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. I would accomplish this over my coffee breaks and during my lunch hour. And that helped when I started. So laying your head on your desk or anything like that, it's not the same. You have to have a total timeout for 10, 15 minutes. And you'll be amazed at what a difference it makes. So courage does not always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I'll try again tomorrow. This is your new motto. It wasn't perfect today. I didn't accomplish everything I wanted to do, but I'll try again tomorrow. Don't give up. Don't get angry. Just saying, okay, this is the best I could do today. Don't beat yourself up. You'll try again tomorrow. Remember, it is the interaction with others that will give you the opportunity to work on your compensatory strategies. Does everybody know what those are? Okay? And work on redeveloping your social skills. This is a hard one. I still have issues. And I get accused of interrupting conversations. I said, well, I thought you were done. So this is the hardest part, is reading social cues and that type of thing, understanding conversations and just body language, facial cues and all that kind of stuff. It's like we're not coming into this anymore, and it does take a lot to just slow down and realize. And sometimes you have to tell your friends, hey, it's not good for me to go to this noisy coffee shop where I can't even hear anything. There's too much background, there's too many conversations going on. I have to go to a quieter spot, then I can hear you, and then, I can make sense of what's going on. And your friends, if they love you and they understand you, they're going to make these accommodations because they want to see you. And they're going to understand, this is your limitation, this is the way it is for them. It will get better over time, but then if you have any relapses come up, you have to say, oh, okay, I have to take it easy again for the next month or so. But social skills is a big one. And you have to explore your limitations, like the energy. One of the graphics I had in previous sessions said an average person, I think, has, was it 16 hours of energy a day? But a person with a TBI only has 4. So you have to budget that energy really carefully. That's why you have to become very vigilant with what you're doing with your day. You have to be very aware of what you're doing and how you're spending that energy. And that's why the spoon theory and the Parker Pacewood, there's handouts back there, they will help you figure all that out. And recognize your stressors. So sometimes loud noises will bother you, sometimes bright lights or flashing lights will be a thing, and it'll just knock you on your ass for the rest of the day and you can't do anything. Well, you have to start recognizing those and start figuring out how to avoid them. Don't go to those environments anymore. Find ways to avoid becoming overwhelmed, so that was the same thing. And discover the new qualities that make you unique. And like I said, you can get your sparkle back. It's going to take some work, and it's going to be different than it was before. Maybe similar, but it'll be a little bit different. Like I told the group earlier, I said, no way in hell would I've ever thought I'd be a public speaker or an author. Look at me. I'm doing it. And I know that was not on my agenda. You just never know what's going to come at you. And we always, always, always have to remember, we are not less now because of brain injury. We are just different than what we used to be. So recognizing loss of self and then progressing to accepting your new self, here are 3 beginnings here. At the start, there is no greater nightmare than waking up and discovering that the self you took for granted is gone. Yes, it's a big shock, it's horror, it's hard to live with, but then you move on from that when you do start recognizing that, and then you start here where it says, loss makes artists of us all as we weave new patterns into the fabric of our lives. It's so beautiful. And then you move on to Walter Gretzky here, Wayne Gretzky's dad. He had a brain aneurysm in 91, and he said here, I'm not the man I was in 91 and never will be. I accept that. I've moved on. Whatever my problems, something happened to me along the way to my recovery. Something good. You don't see it now, but it will be there. Something good, something that changed my attitude, my sense of myself, and turned my life into something once again worth living. And this is Nicole. She has a blog called Better Brain, and she describes that here. Brain injury is transformation, a time of deep reflection, and a new beginning. Brain injury is celebrating the smallest of victories, finding your strength and becoming a warrior, an upheaval of your whole life. And then you climb off the edge and pave a new path. It's waking up one day and realizing you're no longer a stranger in your life. Isn't that wonderful? Yes, growth is painful. Change is painful. But nothing is as painful as staying stuck where you don't belong. Why would you want to stay there in all that pain and agony? The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And life is not about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. Figure out ways to have fun. Enjoy yourself while you're discovering new things about yourself and new goals and new skills and stuff like that that you never would have had time to do before. There is no statute of limitations on starting over. Reinvent yourself every day. Be a phoenix. Rebuild from the ashes. Let go of the idea that you must always be who you have always been. You will simply amaze yourself. This letter is to you. The you that's had a rough week. The you that seems to be under constant storm clouds. The you that feels invisible. The you that doesn't know how much longer you can hold on. The you that has lost faith. The you that always blames yourself for everything going wrong. To you, you are incredible. You make this world a little bit more wonderful. You have so much potential and so many things left to do. You have time. Better things are coming your way. So please hang in there. You can do it. Now, anybody need a break? Everybody functioning fine? We're okay? Want to continue on? Okay. So links and resources. Grief and grieving resources. We mentioned Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and here's her book there on grief and grieving. You probably can get that at the Calgary Public Library, and I did see it on Amazon. They also have it in audiobook as well too, for those who are having problems reading. So that's a good one to start understanding the process of grieving. And there's also a couple online articles there, brain injury and grief, and these are in the handouts there, the resources that you have there. These are all listed in there. And brain injury, grief is extraordinary grief, and that's from Psychology Today. Coping with loss of self, of course we mentioned that in my book. Diane Roberts Stoller in her updated book now, Coping with Concussion and Mild Traumatic Brain Injury. Carolyn E. Dolan, and she's a brain injury survivor as well, and she wrote a book called Brain Injury Rewiring for Survivors. And there's the Better Brained blog, and Coping with Loss and Change After Brain Injury on brainline.org website. And Brain Injury Resource Center. This is the best online resource ever. I didn't have enough room to put that in the title. I came across this probably, like I think I mentioned, about 2004 and 2005, and it was just such a plethora of information in there. It was hard for me to make sense of everything. It doesn't seem like it's organized or much, but I figured out that go down the left column there and you start seeing all the different sections and that type of thing. And once I got in there, and I was in there for months, this will keep you busy for a long, long time when you start looking. And they have worksheets, and inventory sheets and little assignments that you can do for yourself. This is very introspective, deep soul work. Take your time with this, and you will just be amazed at how much you will gain from this here. So this is when the first one I came across. I didn't realize even that it was under advocacy skills, but I linked into goal analysis, and I came across something called goal setting. And I don't know what it did. It just gave me a direction. I said, oh, okay, this is what I want to do. I don't want to be over here suffering anymore. I want to do this, 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 and this. And I was off and running. It was just shocking. But this is the one you guys would be interested here, life after brain injury. And there's a getting started section there, essential skills, but especially a loss of self, found self, denial, and anger. And they all have workshops, worksheets and stuff like that, and inventory sheets you can go through. Here's a sample here of the head injury losses. That's just partial sample of some of the worksheets they have in there. And it is well worth your time to print these off and work on this. And take your time. This is very important work to learn more about your new self. And there's some books here as well too about your new self. And this one here, I hear about this a lot. I haven't read any of these yet, but I hear a lot about the first two. And the third one I came across today, and it looks really interesting, so I might be looking up that book to check it out too. I'll Carry the Fort, Recovering in Life After Brain Injury. Life with a Traumatic Brain Injury, Finding the Road Back to Normal. Check with the Calgary Public Library. They might have these here. If not, then you can order them on Amazon. Or check with SAVIS. They might have something like that in their library. Everybody's aware of SAVIS? Southern Alberta Brain Injury Society? Yeah? If you're not, that's your man to talk to. He's heavily involved with that, Terry. And also neurosculpting here looks really interesting. A whole brain approach to heal trauma, rewrite limiting beliefs, and find wholeness. That one really interests me, so I think I might go check that one out. So we'll get into community resources here. Everyone's familiar or heard about CAR, the Community Accessible Rehab Program. And this is a short-term active rehabilitation program with a focus on self-management skills and community reintegration. You will need a referral from your family doctor 3 months post-injury, but before 18 months post-injury. And there are 3 centers where they offer this program at Peter Lougheed, Sheldon Shamir, and the South Calgary Health Center. And you'll have access there to occupational therapists, physiatrists, hey, I said it good, social workers, psychologists, recreational therapists, speech therapy pathologists, and therapy assistants. Now, I did call up and I spoke to the coordinator of CAR at Sheldon Shamir because we heard rumor that they were going to be limiting this program to sports-related injuries, and she was happy to tell me that rumor is false. It is there for the general public. So for eligibility to access CAR, you'll need evidence of a neurological event, so you'll need a referral from your family physician. They provide primary services and start out with an education session. If you have ongoing needs and meet criteria for assessment, you may then be referred to a physiatrist again at Foothills Brain Injury Clinic, or possibly the pain clinic at the old Holy Cross Hospital, or the Alberta Healthy Living Program to learn more about pacing, or possibly referred for active psychology. And then I asked, well, when does a patient, how would they ever get referred to a neuropsychologist if they feel that is necessary? Not every concussion person needs a neuropsych assessment, but people who've had multiple concussions and a history of concussions, or they're 2 and 3 years down the road and they still haven't got better, then they might be a candidate for a neuropsych assessment. And so they advised here that when you go through their program, if they determine that you need further assessment to see a neuropsych doctor, that then you would be transitioned to a private corporation for neuro assessment. And this was updated December 2018, the brain injury program at Foothills Hospital. It's an outpatient service is based upon a centralized referral program, which provides triage and advice from our community case manager for access to several different services, including subacute concussion education systems delivered approximately every 2 weeks. This consists of symptom management advice in a group format to individuals affected by concussion within 3 months of injury. A brain injury rehab clinic. Oh, I don't know why that is in there. Brain injury rehab clinic provides assessment and treatment by physiatrists. Hey, there's 3 out of 3 so far. Social workers are also associated with the clinic, and they also liaison with a CAR program in order to arrange interdisciplinary rehabilitation for individuals as required. And you check with your family doctor for referral into that, or you can check out their website there too for extra information. And this is a new utility. I've been hearing about this coming for a long time, myhealthalberta.ca. This site was built by the government of the Alberta government and Alberta Health Services to give Albertans a place to go for health information they can trust. Healthcare experts across the province make sure the information is correct, up to date, and written for people who live in Alberta. myhealthalberta.ca is home to valuable, easy to understand health information and tools made for Albertans, including information about health conditions, healthy living, medications, tests, and treatments. There are also educational videos, symptom checkers, emergency phone numbers, and healthcare locator. And this is now available, an early education, concussion education module for patients. And I've been hearing about this coming for a while, and I think I was at the public talk at the university. It was either in November or December, and they were mentioning this here. And so there's their website there to access. But you can just go to my healthalberta.ca, and I think you probably, I never followed the chain, I just had the link from the web, the brain injury clinic at Foothills. But probably under health conditions, you'll probably find the link in there for concussion. But that is the direct link there, and it is on your handouts there. So that's quite exciting. And when you get started on there, they do a little quiz at the beginning before you get started to test your knowledge about concussions. You might be interested to know I got it all right. And there's also local support groups here in Calgary for concussions and traumatic brain injuries. Of course, our group here, Calgary Concussion Awareness and Support. And there's Concussion Life. They meet the first Monday each month in Kensington. They have a website there. And there's also Concussion Info and Support Meetup, and they meet twice monthly at the Co-op Midtown Market, and they started in July 2017. And they have a link there on the Meetup website. And also we have information handouts available here at our meetings. So things like the spoon theory we talked about, and self-care is a big thing with the self-love and that type. You have to learn all this for learning about your new self. And all of our handouts there, and the one there you have now with the resources slides from this evening. And our presentation videos are also available on Facebook and YouTube. This is all free at no cost to any general public person can get in there and look at it. But specifically for this session tonight, you will be interested in coping strategies, parts 1, 2, and 3, as well as managing yourself and your recovery. Those are very important videos that will help learning more about loss of self and learning more about your new self and coping with all this. And also there's online support groups for concussions on Facebook. The one in pink there is called Pink Concussions. It's for females over 25. They now have a subgroup for Canadians, so that's kind of nice. I'm heavily involved in that one as well too. And then there's online support groups for traumatic brain injury on Facebook as well too. And the one that's in orange there, Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Awareness, that's the page that I run. It's an informational page to tell people, to explain the theory that concussion is not the same as mild traumatic brain injury. So our upcoming meetings here, we meet the last Friday of every month from September to May, except December. Our next meeting is coming up February the 22nd, and we have a guest speaker coming in, Dr. James Haxton. He's a chiropractic neurologist, and his topic will be concussion management. And we're also working on getting other guest speakers and different topics that we're thinking of covering here. Survivor warrior success stories, cranial sacral therapy, and NUCA. A lot of people have been asking me about this, National Upper Cervical Chiropractic Associates. When they do the atlas adjustments, they work on the high cervical area of your neck and that. I've never explored it, but there's a couple people who've done it and they've been very pleased with it. You have? And what was your
I know,
success?
yeah, well, how do you define success? The very first time I went for my first adjustment when I left, I noticed that my eyes, like my head was just clearer the first time.
Wow.
Like, and I think
It's like the brain fog?
Yeah.
Was lifted?
momentarily.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how many times did you have to go back for treatment?
I can't remember. It
Oh,
was
okay.
about $2,000, $2,500.
Wow. Yeah,
It's not cheap.
no.
None of it's cheap.
No. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that with the CAR program, and I'm saying like, initially on their website, it says we have access to a neuropsych, and she said, yeah, it is misleading. She said, we're gonna have to fix that. Because it looks like it's automatic, and it'll be
No,
through
it's-
Alberta Health. And
no,
she
I-
said, no, they would refer you to a private company.
I've been through the CAR program.
Yeah.
I was through it for a year.
Yeah, well, that's good.
No, that doesn't, they don't do the neuropsych.
No, but according to the website, that's how, because they said we have access to this, and neuropsych was on there. So she said, oh, that is misleading, isn't it? I said, yeah, you need to change that. So we do have a flyer for our next meeting in February. There are flyers back there. You can pick those up and share them with other people who might be interested in attending and learning more about concussions or learning more about chiropractic neurology. If you would prefer to receive a flyer electronically, please be sure to add your name to our email list back there. And please also visit our Facebook page so you can keep up to date on meetings, pertinent articles, events, and general information. And ta-da! We're doing pretty good time-wise. Does everybody have any comments or questions? Or we want to get right into our open sharing and discussion section? And then I don't record that part. So, yep.
Would we be able to get a soft copy? Remember we were talking about that?
I did post it up on the, oh, you're not in there. I have a closed support group for regular attendees, and I did send an email to you guys.
I know, but
I know.
I missed
So
it.
it's posted in there.
Okay. I have to go in and accept it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I will stop this